Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives with Merrylin, LeBlanc, and myself, Michael Bartlett, here from Santa Fe, New Mexico. The 23rd of December. Christmas is along the way. My little elfin ears are showing at this point. But if you're liking our channel and appreciating it, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe, share with your friends, send us emails, leave comments. We love to hear from people who are enjoying our show. How you doing today, Merrylin?
I'm doing fine, Michael, and I love your little Santa thing. And I'm going to refer to my green whatever. I know somebody had asked me one time, what is that snaky like thing? It's a string of green stars hanging down from a butterfly.
So chemtrails, but from a butterfly.
But from the butterfly, yes, sending us magical stars, abracadabra stuff.
It's funny you
But
say
it's
that. I
kind of
just thought,
Christmassy.
sorry.
It's kind of Christmassy, but I have it up all year.
It's funny when you say that. I just watched a show the other night. It's called Wolf Walker. It's on Netflix. It's an animated movie that really kind of has to deal with, the ways in which we've separate humans have separated themselves from nature through the indoctrination of religion and the split, the sin, the separation that occurred because of it. And it's just like, it's funny because I see that and I see like the trail of the butterfly, like if we weren't as separated from ourselves as butterflies and other things move along, we would probably be able to see their tracks in a sort of energetic sense.
Oh yeah, and you're making me think of it's how really it's a shame that religion has broken away from nature in some cases. And also the synchronicity of that topic that you just raised. I was talking to a friend in California the other night who we both actually were nuns together. We had entered the convent. We went to different high schools, but we entered the convent together, etc. And she started sharing some things that she had done because of her connection with nature. And I said, "Oh, what you're talking about reminds me of what I used to do. And I used to go out, outside on the green grass and communicate with the blades of grass. And then in our theology classes, learned about animism. And I said, oh my God, that's what I'm doing. I'm not going to tell anybody." And she didn't tell anybody either. I wasn't going to I let Catholicism shut me off from some things for a good part of my youth, but I wasn't going to let them take that away from me. That was my.
It's so beautiful you say that because I think, it's such an interesting thing because it gets to, I know I have something in my chart that so speaks to this anyway. It's a Jupiter in Taurus, which opposes Neptune and Scorpio from the 6th house to the 12th house. So I always see it as like the sacred and the profane, right? But isn't that what being alive is all about? And there's been, I don't know, like I've been really sitting kind of like with this idea of humanity and looking back just merely over the last several hundred years and thinking about how much our consciousness has changed from such fear-based things, where we were fearful of, say, a black cat, or we were fearful of certain days of the week, or we were fearful of the ways certain people looked at us, or when foreigners came, all these different ways that kind of kept the safety of the world intact for us, but from a total place of fear and a place of separation. So here comes in religion that teaches us this thing of like, oh, we're separated from God. And, but then Christ has come back in to teach us that we're not separate and to remind us of that. And then religion's built up on that in a way that still keeps us separate. And the truth is we have to see, like, in every blade of grass, there is God. Whether that God is, however you vision God, however that energetic system of what it is, the all that I like to consider it, the all that is, because that makes it a little bit easier for me. It's this concept that I, from my lowly little human experience, could never, I don't think I can grasp on any level what that level of deity must be. And for me to project into that space, I think is hubris on the human experience. That's why I think it's so funny when we think about the Greek gods, because it's just these ways we find to see ourselves reflected back and understand how to be in relationship to one another in life.
Yes, because I think ultimately everything is interconnected. There's no real disconnect. However, one of the things that we were talking about before we came onto the Zoom session was this, this realization in our country that so many people um, seem to be in a totally different mindset about the country and about what's sane and about how we treat each other. I mean, some people are so very comfortable with being prejudiced and being separate from and thinking they're better than. And the numbers just amaze me. And I guess it's just things that are coming out in the open that haven't been expressed openly. Just like I kept my secret about how I treated nature when I was a Catholic.
And I mean, I think that's where there's this very interesting crossover, and I think there's such a similarity. It was, I get the New York briefs, and so it kind of covers all these things. Many of the things that have gone up in this time period is hunting. And there's a full range, of course, like there is with all human expression, of the ways people go about hunting. But some of the people I know here in Santa Fe, especially a lot of Native American people and people who are of Spanish descent here in Santa Fe and in general New Mexico, actually go out with bow and arrow to hunt elk. I mean, they do it from a very conscious place of it, and they use all the meat. They use, it's something very sacred and an understanding of it.
Sort
But
of like that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy. Remember
a
that movie
long time ago.
with the Coca-Cola bottle?
But to find, it's like, I think in that place of where hunter, I don't know, I think, I'm sorry, I'm jumbling in my head a little bit, like, the idea of this left wing and this right wing. And the truth is we're all actually more like probably moderate than we are like either extreme. I think the basic need, each side and everyone along the spectrum is basically wanting the same things. They want, they want a roof over their head. They want their family to be safe. They want them to be healthy. They want to have, some level of education and understanding about how to live and exist in the world, and the opportunity to thrive. I mean, I think, all of this that's going on, you're talking about we were talking basically the psychology. It's like the programming of the people. And this last election kind of shows that there's a whole, basically half the population that are really unhappy with the liberal oriented objectives. And so the
And
question
yeah,
is how to get people to understand that, that everyone is really kind of looking for a similar thing, and how do we make it so that everyone has some, like, kind of like a baseline of understanding, of education, of health. How do we create that in this world? I mean, I think with all these aspects that are coming up, which, by the way, I'm going to put a plug in right now on this coming December, on Saturday, the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. Merrylin, myself, Aaron Sullivan, and Daniel Fiverson will be doing a talk on 2021 and the things going to be unfolding. Please take a look at brownpapertickets.com and look up The Gates of Hell Are Open, or just 2021, and you'll be able to see it fairly quickly. Tickets are $15 a piece. Please tell your friends. Want to have a night. There's going to be some really great opportunity to hear some wonderful stuff, and we're also going to take questions and answers at the end. But
right. And if people aren't available to watch that at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, and be a live part of the Zoom where you can actually be seen like each of us are, or and also ask questions at a certain point. You can always access the whole thing and watch it at your leisure. And as some people even mentioned, some of you might want to go back over during the year and watch certain parts, like, what was that Michael said about the midpoint of the year, around now, something will be happening. I know you mentioned there's a lot of air energy for the coming year. And I imagine that you'll point out when those events will be. And people may want to jog their memories of things like that. So
yeah, one thing is I'm going to have like a little sheet that basically has like a little summary of the whole year by all the air aspects. I mean, it's just it's quite a reworking, I think, for us to kind of rethink things and to re-see how we do life. I mean, one thing that I love about astrology is it gives us kind of an understanding of how each individual is not only going to be experiencing life, but how they're going to view life. right? So when we talk about when an accident, there are 9 people and an accident happens, you're going to get 9 different versions of the story, right? Well, it's funny because if you were to look at their charts, as you're hearing them talk about what they witnessed, you're going to hear their story being replayed, right? The person who's very watery and has like a water moon, with strong water access moon, is going to be just emotionally struck by the accident, again, that kind of experience. Another person is, with a lot of air, is going to be able to go, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened, in this great, really structured order, want to be able to tell their story to someone. But what's great is to learn that it's about having all these stories accessible. It's not about having one story. We need to start hearing from more. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing that I think our country's moving into, is stepping away from the duality, this Democrat Republican sort of thing, and start allowing for more what we are here in this country. We've always called ourselves a melting pot. I haven't heard the word melting pot in the last 4 years. Have you?
No, no, I haven't. Interesting point you make. Yeah. Well, the thing too is even people who are born on the same day and maybe even close to the same time. I actually did a consultation with a woman who was born in the same year, same day, etc. Very similar charts, very different realities. And it brings up the point that astrology can tell us about the dynamics, but it doesn't tell us the consciousness level that somebody is operating off of. And it's one of the reasons why I have years ago decided to focus on the moon, because the moon and the sun together are about our consciousness and about raising our consciousness. And of course, one of the things that I'll be talking about on this Zoom session is Jupiter and Saturn, which are really about collective, well, social consciousness and sometimes collective consciousness, and how we get stuck at certain points in what can be called karma, what goes around comes around sort of thing. And so some parts, it's probably all wrapped up with the rift that we have of liberals, say, and conservatives. Not that there aren't points of common understanding, and they vary from individual to individual. But in fact, a lot of those kinds of ideology things come about because individuals have arrived at a social consciousness. And, like people will talk about the ideology of Republicans versus that of Democrats, for example, and the and in both parties you have this kind of range of like a range of conservatism and a range of liberalism, um, and those all have to do with the individual, the putting together all these individual consciousness things, and then of course there's the dynamics of who's in charge and that taking over and all of that sort of thing. And so it's not surprising that we reached a point that we're at. It's just disconcerting.
But also too, when you look at what's going on with the astrology, as Jupiter and Saturn are now conjunct in Aquarius, right, at the very earliest degrees. They're slowly making their way into a final, as you talked about last time, a third quarter square with Uranus. A time of crisis and consciousness, the understanding that there's something different. Um, I think one thing, it's funny, like what just popped into my mind is the idea of a rubber band. I think the rubber band of our society is really being very, very stretched at this point. It's being stretched in such a way that there's such great tension, and either has to break or it has to snap back into some sort of a central aspect, right? And I think we're going to see aspects of both, with all this focus on air, the Saturn and Jupiter coming in and saying, you just said it in a way, that's Aquarian, Saturn and Uranus working together, right? How does the individual and the society, how does that get to weave together in a way where everyone can win? Because it does work. You look at certain countries around the world, and I'm going to mention Denmark because it's just one of my favorites anyway, but gets voted as the happiest. But you talk to most Danes and they would say the word is probably more like content. You know, how do human beings start to act when they're content in their life, when they feel like they have enough, when they're not struggling, when they're not having to worry, like so many Americans right now are having to worry about how to put food on their plate, food on their table, how to work and take care of their kids who can't be in school and be in relationship, you know, with maybe a partner, you know, or, you know, a spouse that, you know, that hasn't been in a good relationship for a while, being stuck in the house. I mean, this is, you know, we're literally on kind of a bit of a powder keg. And I think as we experience these Saturn Uranus squares with Jupiter playing in between, I think we're going to see little mini eruptions of awakening, because it's like, so people realize, you know, that it doesn't, we have to start understanding that it doesn't have to be this way. The whole pandemic has kind of given us this understanding, like we don't have to go into an office to do a 9 to 5. So many of us can do this from our homes. There are different ways that we can improve about going with our lives. I think Aquarius is really about improving, looking at the general organization of a system, and then kind of taking those Virgoan parts, which sees and goes through and tabulates, oh, that, and that. If you put these together and work them in this way, then you'll even get a better machine. And that's the truth of what Aquarius is about, is kind of building a better social machine. And our country and the world, in fact, really need to build a better human machine, human social machine of how we get along, how we're responsible to one another, how we're responsible to ourselves, how we can lift one another up, as opposed to going like, okay, that's where we're going to go and make these people are the poor people here in the southern climes versus the ones in the north who are going to make the money because they were smarter. You know, it's a different type of intelligence. We all have different types of intelligence.
Mhm. There's a couple factors here, you know, and I'm thinking like individually, you know, like you think about winning the lottery or something. Oh gosh, I could be in the millionaire class right away. There's this kind of drive that I think exists in many of us to have more, and not necessarily the realization of, well, what if we all had enough? The contentment that you just talked about. There's that kind of clash in our in many of our basic beliefs and perspectives on the world, which really do rule the decisions we make. We don't think of it that way, but it is those really core beliefs or desires, even too, that lie underneath our longings. And we should think of a slogan for let's have contentment in the United States of America. It's a kind of a way, because you know the thing I was thinking, you know, like of Denmark and those other Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands, and thinking, you know, they didn't come to that conclusion necessarily based on religious beliefs. And because there's a lot of secularism actually in Europe today and over the past decades as well. But a kind of realization uh, um, of when everybody is, as you put it, content, there's less problems. I mean, life is, there's always some tension, but it's more of a personal thing. Like, oh, I slipped on the ice and broke my leg, and you know, now how am I going to be able to do da 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 da? There's always that kind of tension, or you know, suddenly somebody passes away, and the plans that you'd made together can't happen. Life is fraught with some certain kinds of tension, but we don't need this economic tension that we've been having. And
Survival level.
yeah, yeah, and so in some ways, how we've dealt with economics is at the core of the problem, the major problems that we have, the universal common social problems that exist country to country, you know. And
And
some countries have been better at finding solutions than others. And we're certainly not at the top of that pursuit.
well, we're in a very, I mean, the United States is a very interesting conglomeration. I mean, you know, our states are the size of most European countries, and if not larger, and making more money than many of the well, a few of our states, I'll say, not all of them. But so it's a very interesting conundrum. I mean, we're not really different than an EU. And so the question, is I think some of the things that kind of come up now is this going to be the beginning of us, is the federal government going to come in a way that makes the states feel like it should belong to a union, right? Because are their benefits worth it enough to stay united? But that's the game that California continues to ask itself. That's the game that Texas continues to ask itself. Do we want to play by the rules of this federal United States when maybe we can go off and be our own economy and not have to be bound by those things and pay into such a system when they can take care of that themselves? But those are going to be the things that are going to have to be continued to ask and worked on.
Right. Well, it's funny that you bring that up because during the past election lead up, um, I was engaged in conversations about, certain states, certain segments of the country, like the whole West Coast, and in a way, include New Mexico, except our neighboring states are questionable.
Well, we're all kind of purple here. The four corner states are kind of purple. I mean, we swing a little bit based on, there's a few, what I've learned to call them over the
we're
years.
more to the blue than the neighboring states, in my opinion.
But here in Santa Fe and certain places in each of the four corners are kind of like oases in the middle of, it's agriculture, gas and oil, right? I mean, there's a lot of that in the four corners, and those tend to be very conservative. And then the cities like Santa Fe and Denver and Phoenix and I'm not going to say Salt Lake City, although Salt Lake City is kind of, I'd say Park City is a little more on that,
So these are all Jupiter Saturn issues that we're addressing. Actually, the social dynamics that we live by. It's and we'll definitely be talking more about that on Saturday. And the gates of hell are open. How do you see the gates of hell are open in terms of the coming year?
Well, I mean, for me, like how I'm taking it is I'm seeing air getting into the underworld. I mean, I'm really literal. I mean, it's kind of like a continuation of what my talk was last year, where I talked about, the different things that were going on and a breath of fresh air, which is what I think of this Saturn Jupiter. But I didn't look into 2021. I mean, there was enough going on in 2020 to keep all of our minds busy. But when I started looking at 2021,
And to be like hell.
Sorry?
And to be like hell as well.
Yeah, and hell is,
hell is a state of mind.
It's such a great way you put that, because I was going to say there's such a great series called Lucifer. And what I really love about it is it's this idea, because again, it's about perspective. Lucifer is the fallen angel. It's the idea that it's not that God has cast him out or anything, or that he's bad. It's just that he's able to say things and do things because he's an angel, right? But the thing is he's forgotten his own divinity. His sin, which sin is the word without, is how, and it's all of us have this sin, the places in which we forget that we are divine beings. I'm sorry, as I wrote the book like Astrological Mavericks, you have what it takes to change the world. But I'm really starting to come to think, with the proliferation of movies that are coming out, here's another Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius. Over the last 10 years have been all these movies and TV shows, on and on and on about mutant abilities and superheroes. Well, I think it's a way for us to try and find a way to honor our individual mutant abilities. We've lived in this black and white world. The way society's worked up until the last few, like since 2000, maybe a little bit before that, is, the vast majority of the population has to operate in a certain way for everything to work. But as people begin to further individuate and become who they are, there's a greater need for allowance along the spectrum of experience. So how do we begin to dot that into it, allow people to go like, hey, I might be autistic, or I might have dyslexia, or I might have any number of certain things that others may consider to be a handicap. But specifically because of whatever it is I go through with that, and because of whatever my natal birth chart is, I have my own other inherent gifts that create something different on the planet. And how do we begin to honor that each one of us is a special being, and that our specialness doesn't take away from anyone else's specialness? How's that for Jupiter, Saturn, and Aquarius?
Oh, possibility. Possibility.
It's right human relationship, right? And how can we have right, if we aren't, I mean, first and foremost, we have to have the right relationship with ourselves. And a right relationship with ourselves has to be able to come from asking ourselves questions about what our motives are, why we're treating people certain ways, why we're acting certain ways, why we're grumpy about things, why we're unhappy about things, why we're happy about things, and addressing them and not making them anyone else's responsibility. That's where we can start enacting our mutant abilities. Each of us has the skill sets to resolve the issues at hand. The question is, do we want to keep soaking in them? You know, like palm olive, you know, you're already soaking in them. You know, some people like soaking in their stuff, right? But
Mhm.
others want to go like, hey, you know what? I want to get out of here. I want to get out into the land and I want to get up onto that mountain. Those are usually Capricorns, of course, you know, they want to succeed.
Well spoken by a Capricorn moon. So, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
a Scorpio moon, just like you.
the, the Aquaria, mm, the Aquarius really wants to raise the common field, only to have that be more supportive of the unique way in which, as an individual, the Aquarius wants to live. You know, recognizes that if we stay in a certain state of being, like for example, the economic status of the world right now during the pandemic and the country during the pandemic, this is just a simple, hopefully temporary condition. But you know, Aquarius recognizes that this isn't comfortable at all, and you know, it's really infringing. Maybe all those people that have objected to wearing masks and keeping social distance have a very strong Aquarian nature, but other things are limited. That's not very nice of me,
Well,
uh,
it's essentially,
but
it's
no, because it's like Aquarius doesn't like its independence impeded by anyone or anything. Um, but some of us Aquarians, and you and I are both Aquarius suns, and I have two other planets in Aquarius. Um, some of us really, you know, look at this impediment as survival, you know, basic survival. So no matter what your sign is, you've got to have that. It's kind of like an Aries Martian kind of energy that says, you know, we actually have to curtail certain activities if, and that's like a Mars Saturn kind of thing, if we're going to survive. And the thing is, Mars and Saturn have been large part in a square relationship over this past year. And so it's like some people have been resisting what that relationship has been transmitting to us. Be careful about the changes you make, and make smart ones. Use your brain, which is also a Martian quality. Use your brain, not your preferences, not your preferences. And so yeah, it's not an easy fix. It's There's a lot
well,
of factors that come to play.
and especially today, I mean, we've got Moon, Mars conjunct, right, with Eris. Eris and Mars are completely conjunct, brother and sister, conjunct one another, squaring Pluto. So, you know, this is a if you're this is not the day to act out on your emotional outbursts. There will be consequences, you know, for that. It's hard because it's like, you know, how do we, you know, humans have the ability to control their instinctual nature. I think of Moon Mars in Aries as being very instinctual. You know, it's like, you know, someone comes along and touches you on your funny bone, your body's going to react in a certain way. Well, we all have that kind of knee jerk reactions in various aspects of our lives. I don't think today's a good day to be around people who are would elicit that in you. Or if you want, it's going to help resolve it because it's an opening square, right? It's like, oh my gosh, when they first came together, which Saturn was there, right? At the time, like you said. So, there's this very nuclear anger, this rage, that's the other thing that I think people aren't really discussing is bubbling under the surface of all this wonderful humanitarianism is a level of survival, a level of complete rage and upset for the lack of response from so many people. And so, how does that rage? We've been seeing that rage expressed, in Black Lives Matters, of course, with the numerous deaths. I just read today 2 more people shot and 2 more Black individuals who were shot and killed. I mean, it's like, what is it going to take? It's like the school shootings. What is it going to take for this country to? I mean, here's Moon, Mars, Pluto square, right?
Yeah. Well, Michael, without getting into it, because I really don't want to discuss it, the exchanges we've had from yesterday to today on the internet are examples of what you were just talking about, because that Mars is in my 7th house of relationships, and that Pluto is in my 4th house, dipping deeply into my soul. And so I have a very personal example of how that Mars, Eris, whatever, has been interacting in terms of um, of our interactions. And we don't need to bore people with that personally. But you would understand that you just described for me, oh yeah, this is what I've been going through.
But I think, what's important in the gift that I think the Aquarian part and all this air stuff that's coming in is I think, how do we find a way to communicate about it? Um, I think sometimes there are those of us, kind of alluding a little more to kind of what we're going on with is, there are some of us who are very strong and forceful in the way we present things. And so like the way I present things, I see them as possibilities. Other people may hear them as orders or that it's done, as opposed to just simply an affirmation. So I think it's really good. Saturn, Saturn can give us that pause. It gives us that ability to go, wait a minute, did I hear that right? Ask a question. Do I want to do that? Wait a minute, that doesn't feel right with my authenticity. And that's the other thing with, I think, that Aries thing is like, what is your real truth? Because Aries, we like to think of Aries as being the full-on warrior, but the truth is Aries understands the price that is paid by pulling the sword out. So they don't typically do that very easily. We like to project onto them that they do, but they tend to be a little bit more thoughtful. They usually require a little more prodding because they're kind of worried that if they are forceful, kind of like how Libra is, right? They're worried if they are a little bit more forceful that no one's going to like them.
Exactly. I mean, Aries isn't exist. None of the planets exist in a world of their own. They have to interact, with all the zodiac signs, and some of them are supportive of, hey, you know, pull out the stops and show yourself, do the thing that you do naturally, and others are saying, whoa, stand back, be careful.
And I think, and I don't know how much more you want to talk about. I think that the other main thing is like it's interesting. And we'll talk about this, of course, on Saturday. But all 3 Mercury retrogrades are in each of the air signs. So I mean, I just think I think it's all about all the ways we think about doing things, the way we see others, the way we relate to others, the way we relate to ourselves. It's just all up for reworking. And we may experience even more of an isolation experience, I think, in 2021 for weird reasons. I think solar flares can end up taking up communication things. This isn't over yet. I mean, people are looking forward to the new year with some optimism, but it's just going to all depend on how we want to be in relationship to it. Are we going to be healthy and responsible, or are we going to sit there and cast blame on other people?
And keep in mind, how do we find that contentment? I like that idea. Find contentment.
Yeah, and maybe the contentment is like, how do we find win-win situations in our relationship? That might be the first thing that we say, like, sometimes we're in relationships with people and things where we give too much and then the resentment builds up. I don't know about you, but with a Aquarius sun and a Scorpio moon, that tends to be one of my things. I give, and then I reach a point where I can't give anymore. I'm like, you know what? My bank account is empty.
Well, I know that I'm a Libra rising. I actually know that dynamic. And I would say over the past 20 some years, I have worked very hard on not doing. I mean, it used to be people could say what they want and sure, yeah, here, you know.
And I think
There was,
that's what we're all going to be learning this year. So I mean, you and I mean, that's why we like doing this show that we're doing. This is why you and I enjoy talking, because the truth is, I think this is the next step for humanity, is finding ways to talk about it, even when things are difficult, even when it feels like very scary or that our lives are going to be at risk. But the truth is, we're not Tyrannosaurus Rexes in relationship with one another. We're dealing with things that really can just simply be talked out if we step out of our fear, if we step out of our ideas of projection.
right. Okay, well, Michael, it's been good talking to you this morning on Zoom, and we'll be just a few more days from now, we'll be back together with others on Zoom. And we hope that some of you who watch this particular video will join us by going to brownpapertickets.com and searching for The Gates of Hell Are Open in 2021, or one of our names. It'll take you to the link and you can purchase a ticket, which is a link to that Zoom session. It's going to be a private Zoom session in which you can ask questions as well. And it's for a $15 fee. You get admission and you'll have access to it anytime afterwards that you'd want to view it. So if you can't come, you could also see it later. Or if you can come, you can also review it later, especially when some of the things that we'll be talking about start to unfold and you want to kind of refresh your mind about, oh yeah, this reminds me, let me go back and listen, or at least, check out what they said. All right.
Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah. If you like our show, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, share with your friends. You can reach me. You can visit my website at coremichael, Michael.com here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the 26th.
Yeah. And you can reach me at moonwiseastrology.com. And, my email is there as well, MerrylinLeBlanc@gmail.com. So all of the above that Michael said about the holidays, be content for the holidays. Do the things that you can do that are safe to do and find contentment in doing those. Happy holidays.